Welcome to the Big Séance podcast. I'm Patrick Keller of BigSéance.com, and this is a place for an open discussion on all things paranormal, but specifically topics like ghosts and hauntings, paranormal research, spirit communication, psychics and mediums, and life after death. So basically, anything that pops up in my paranormal world. The candles are already lit, so you might as well come on in and join the Séance. Once again, you're just in time to join us at the Big Séance table. I have a spectacular and fascinating interview with Karen A. Dahlman for you tonight, and I promise you that I've been having to hold myself back from sharing it with you for the last 2 weeks. I could talk to her all day long about the Ouija. This episode is a good one, and I want to get to it ASAP, but I also wanted to quickly make note of some improvements at BigSéance.com. For many of you, subscribing on iTunes is the best and easiest way for you to get access to these episodes. But for those who would like an easy one-stop shopping experience for all your blog and podcast needs, I've managed to publish all of the episodes and show notes on my blog at BigSéance.com with small players. To access the archive of all podcast episodes, click the Big Séance podcast on the top left of the page in the menu, or on the podcast logo on the right at BigSéance.com. So if you're subscribed to the blog, you won't miss an episode of the podcast either. BigSéancePodcast.com still exists, and will get you to the podcast as well. Okay, so I've blabbed enough. Let's get to the really fun conversation that I had with someone who I can tell you has been very kind and helpful to me, Karen A. Dahlman. Oh my gosh, guys, I am so excited. I'm completely nerding out today, completely, and I'm not even going to be able to play it off. And I'm going to have to try to, compose myself and be professional. But here's why I'm excited, because we have Karen A. Dahlman here today, and I know why I'm excited, and that is because within the paranormal culture, there's kind of a subculture of like spirit communication, and you leave the Bigfoot and the aliens and stuff behind, and you have this spirit communication part that I am just absolutely obsessed with, and she is such a pro. So Karen A. Dahlman is here, and before I start reading the bio and blabbing away, Karen, say hi to us so we can hear your voice.
Hi, Patrick. Hi, everybody that listens to Patrick's show. Great to be here.
She is such a pro, and if you can find several interviews online with Karen, and her bio, she's a Ouija-ologist or a Ouija-ologist, and I've decided I've called her my life-ologist because she's so smart at so many things besides the Ouija. Okay, I'm gonna breathe. I'm going to calmly read Karen's bio here. Karen A. Dahlman is an author, licensed therapist, business owner, and consultant, and a leading expert Ouija-ologist. She has been researching the use of the Ouija board since 1973 by first-handedly using and perfecting her communication with varying consciousness and sentient beings via this tool with consistently amazing results. Having a strong spiritual connection to her spirit friends, as she has throughout her entire life, she teaches others within her books about the positive benefits of using the Ouija board and other creative means as a pathway for expanding and deepening one's world and expression within it in the most profound ways. From working in the creative and humanistic field as a private practice art psychotherapist, and then more recently as the CEO of a consulting and design firm in the high-tech wireless industry, she found herself coming full circle within her career, from right brain to left brain to center brain. Karen strives to maintain a balance of her total brain within her heart. She endeavors to help others deepen into their unique possibilities found only within their heart, so that they too may discover their own empowerment to affect personal growth, their spiritual evolution, and a passionate expression of their calling. Karen shares her developed processes for doing this within her books. And her most recent work, which we're going to refer to probably quite a bit today, and a book that I just absolutely loved and have it sitting here in front of me, is The Spirits of Ouija. Or, I'm sorry, by the way, I'm going to say Ouija and Ouija back and forth 1,000 times because I continue to say it wrong. The Spirits of Ouija, 4 Decades of Communication. But she also has The Spirit of Creativity, Embodying Your Soul's Passion, in which I hope she'll have an opportunity to also kind of throw in there and talk about today. Now, for the listeners, I just want to give them a heads up that for me, as a person who has an intense passion for spirit communication, as you know, and as someone who has done some, I feel, very responsible experimenting with the Ouija board in the last few years, today I have some very specific and somewhat selfish questions for Karen. So before we get to that nerdy stuff, let's stick to some general questions first, shall we? So I don't want to start with the standard, hey, so tell us about the history of the Ouija board. And I mean, feel free to throw a little bit of that in here if you want, because I'm sure there are some listeners that are very curious. But I've been very fascinated by the Victorians and how they use the board. And I mean, I'm very interested in that time period anyway, but the Victorians viewed the Ouija board very differently than we do now, didn't they?
They absolutely did. It was in their parlor house, in their room, parlor room. It was just a tool, a device they'd pull out, and they would call it a game back then. And they would do it after dinner. They might do it, like when you sit around and play cards at a card table. It was a way to just, and they believed they were talking to possible spirits. They believed they were talking to their dead loved ones from the terrible carnage of various wars, whether it was Civil War or World War I. They were able to get into an understanding of what happened to their loved ones. They wanted closure. And around the turn of the century, we're talking now 19th century, late 1800s, there was a big movement about 1860 to late 1800s where they were in a spiritualist movement, it was called. And we were really into, at that time, learning how to make contact with the other side. And it was all about talking to dead people. And so a lot of different kind of spiritual camps came in, and revival camps, and they would talk to the spirits, and you would have tapping and table tipping and alphabet cards and all kinds of fun things. And the Ouija came around in 1890. So that was a little later in time, but it kind of the momentum built up to the right time for the Ouija. And the Ouija became a tool that anybody could use easily without having to spend money on a medium, without having to put their money into somebody to go to their house and have the tables tip. I mean, it was instant. You pull it out of the box and instant you could play. Back then they played, and you could get your messages. And so it became a very easy, quick tool to use, and not unlike it is today. Today's it's a quick, easy tool to use too. Not everybody has great success with it, but it's something you can do on your own, and that really allowed it to move into many of the homes across America.
And am I correct in saying that there was little fear back then with the board?
Well, it's mostly correct to say that, yes, it would have been selling. However, you'll see stories and reports, and there'll be advertisements, geared to people's fear a little bit sometimes, or also to their pastime and pleasure of, you too can talk to your dead spirit friends. Or your dead relatives, things like that. It was kind of funny. But yeah, there were some cases, though, where people were a little nervous and scared about it. But overall, the demeanor about it was really one of just neutral. And, we didn't have the internet back then. And people wrote a letter. It took forever to get to another person's place. They not everybody had phones. It wasn't phones until a little bit later than that were used in every household. So you didn't really communicate with everybody everywhere. So it was telegraph, or it was a card, it was a letter, or it was a newspaper. So the word didn't spread, and the fear couldn't multiply like it does today.
Yeah.
See, today we can take it and Hollywood shows it. Next thing you know, over in Japan, they're already talking about the fear of the next Ouija movie that's coming out. It's that kind of thing. It moves that quickly. So we don't have the social media back then. And so there wasn't the fear. The fear wasn't rampage, though it did exist in some places. I think more than anything, our culture there was very open to reaching out and talking to this other dimension of the deceased, that they welcomed it more and they were very open to it. Than more, maybe more so. We're open to it today, but there's also a very scary negative connotation around it as well. Back then, it wasn't as prevalent.
Which kicked off in 1973. Am I right?
Yes. Yes. You're going into The Exorcist, aren't you?
Uh-huh. Because I've read your book. Good.
Well, let me quiz you. What day was that? Do you remember what day it was in 1973?
Okay, I'm going to show you how nerdy I am. I don't remember what day, but I remember you got your first Ouija board like something crazy like a few days before or like the week before.
It was Christmas Day. I got it. I got it Christmas Day, and The Exorcist came out the day after, December 26th.
Isn't that so crazy?
It is crazy, and I didn't know anything about The Exorcist or the movie even coming out. I mean, that was a movie my parents probably would never have let me see, and I didn't even get to see it till I was a lot older. And here I have a Ouija board. But you got to remember now, The Exorcist, it's based on supposedly a true story about a boy who was supposedly possessed, and he never used a Ouija board. And the true account of this boy, though in the movie they made use of the Ouija board, very smart, because when Parker Brothers took it over in 1966 from the Fold Company and started developing the board, they sold 2 million copies. It outsold Monopoly, the highest selling toy at the time. So heck yeah, Hollywood's gonna use it, and it sells. Fear sells. I hate to say it, and it does, and so I'm okay with that. And when I was little, I didn't quite understand all that. I just thought, well, that's funny because this board works really well for me.
And well,
right?
I know that, or I've read anyway, that with this new Ouija movie that's supposedly coming out, they've had horrible promoting, by the way. But,
okay.
But with the new movie, I've read that Parker Brothers now, right? Or is it still?
Yeah, it's Hasbro owns Parker Brothers. So
okay.
It's both, right?
So I've heard that they've been had a big hand in for many years trying to get this movie out. So.
Oh, excellent. Well, it's good timing. I think, which is amazing to me. I mean, I didn't time my book to come out for any pertinent time. It's just that my first book came out, and then people wanted to understand why I wrote my first book and how I wrote it, because I talked about my spirit friends helping me write my first book as kind of like an editing colleague, a group or colleagues that helped me write my first book. And so that's when my book came out, and all of a sudden everybody's talking about Ouija. But it's kind of like that phenomenon when you want a red car and everywhere on the road you see a red car. So I am probably, because I've stepped into this community of, I guess, paranormal, you call it, I was never trying to be a part of any community. I was just doing my book, and then it became that, and I'm okay with that. That's great, because it's accepted at times, and at times people fear it. That's fine, but at least we were open enough to hear it and discuss it, and it's perfect timing for the movie to come out too. I think people are listening and open and want to learn more. And yes, the fear in itself is kind of great too. It's going to help promote that movie, because people want to be, they want to be scared. They like that fear factor, adrenaline rush, I guess you can call it.
Well, maybe that answers my next question, because I was going to ask you if when a new Ouija movie comes out, do you roll your eyes, or do you get excited about it?
I actually get excited about it. Like even Witchboard, I remember when that came out. Was that in the 80s, I think? Or not, I can't remember, 80s, 90s. I remember when it came out, I was like, well, that's not at all how it works. And, and I was very private back then about my use of the board. And I've been doing my work quite 20 years before that movie even came out. And I was just thinking, it's kind of cool that they're welcoming this, although it'll be used in a negative way. And I know that. And the Ouija board has been blamed for a lot of people's behavior. They project onto the board what it is they don't want to look at within themselves. We can talk about that. That's a whole psychological concept. And we can get into that. It's fine. I mean, we do that all the time in our lives. And then I think the board, it does cater to, you could speak to some spirits that are a little more negative. So I'm kind of excited when the movies come out because they capture all aspects of that. Usually, typically not the real benign or the way I use it for developmental purposes or spiritual growth. They usually don't capture on that. Maybe this new one will touch on it. I'm not clear, but if not, I'm here to talk about that. And I welcome that. At least we just getting its time in the light again.
Right.
Right.
Well, I'm certainly excited about the movie, just like I get excited about any movie involving ghosts or
Me
hauntings
too.
and things like that. So I guess you just have to learn to, as you've told me, let go of the things that are going to be really silly.
That's planchette lesson 1. Learn to let go, and that's how you let the planchette work.
Let go.
Let go.
Okay, so as I've pointed out to you, and we've talked about this, I've experimented several times with the Ouija board over the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And you've even commented and have been very supportive of those experiments in the past, but I've still never experienced any communication or activity or the planchette moving on the board. And I suspect my problem involves not having enough patience. And it has probably been 6 months, since I used the board. Do you have any words or advice of encouragement for me or any other listeners who may be experiencing similar results with their Ouija board?
And you're not alone. I do get a lot of questions on that level. And I know quite a few people who have the same experience. They'll sit there and it won't work. And they'll follow everything in the book. But what I do find where it drops out is they'll do it a few times. And then because they didn't get responses within the first few sessions, I'm done. Or I'll wait another month, or then it becomes 3 months or 6 months. And it's like with anything you're learning. I'm a golfer. I don't know if I could say I'm really a golfer. I attempt to be a golfer. And I just can't go out and play once a week to be really good and expect those results. If I go out and I'm only playing once a week and not doing all my practice like I should be doing to really play a good game, I can't be mad at myself. I can't go, oh my God, I suck. It's the fact that I haven't really given myself the time with my clubs. Same with the planchette. You need many, many hours of the planchette under your fingers on the board, miles and miles and miles of planchette, because that will allow you to create the circuitry with, number one, with your partner. Oh, you don't want to switch partners all the time either, because that makes it hard again to get that contact. Mm-hmm. So I try to pick one person or two or three that I'm going to be solid with, that will be consistent and work with me, because their consistency with it also matters. So it's doing that. It's having the consistency of doing it. If you're going to say, I'm going to do it once a week and I'm going to do it for an hour and a half only, boom, done. Even if your messages start getting better and better, you may extend it 10 minutes or 15, but nothing more than that. Put it away. Do it again. It's building that up, building that practice up. You're not just building a practice for you. It's a practice for the energies on the other side. When I say other side, it's really another dimension. We always like to talk about the Ouija like a portal. And I use that just for sake of ease of communicating about it. Truly, it's just to make a connection, and it's a tool that they can use to spell and pick the numbers and yes and no and things like that, so we can communicate back. There truly is no hole that's opening up or a portal. That's more, I would say, metaphorical. Although literally, you do open up. To say what it looks like, I can't really say what it looks like. Although I've been told from the other side, it looks like light. Another dimension, it looks like light. From my side, I see nothing other than the planchette moves. But I do feel. So it's doing that consistently, allowing the other side, the other dimensions, the other energies to build that up with you too. For them to move, to use the energies, your circuitry of you and your partner, to use the energies of your hands, the energy focus on that planchette, to help move it, to get the energy in there to move it through your body, through your movements. That's a crazy feat. That's a hard feat to do. And it definitely requires them a lot of practice. And so I find what beginners do, I hear this from every novice I talk to, they ask yes, no questions only. because they quickly, the board starts working or the planchette starts moving. I said, okay, but you're getting yes, no, but you're not getting any details.
Right.
You're making them up yourself. Why would you want to do that? If you go, all right, so what's your name? And they don't get a name. They go, they go to a letter J. Oh, is your name John? Yes. Okay. Were you born what year? And you start fishing and you give up answers and it's like, you'll never get anything real.
Yeah.
You've got to learn to take the time to let it spell. That's what takes the longest time. Once you get through that hurdle, like with golf, once I go to the driving range enough times and play 2 or 3 times a week, then I'm through that hurdle. That's what it requires. It requires the time. And I think you and your listeners and others who are working on it, if they can set that aside and be patient with it, you will get results.
And I guess I should know better because as you're sitting here answering that question, I'm remembering and thinking back to before the Ouija board. I went through my original obsession with EVP, had to develop that consistent routine and learn to be patient, even though you've spent hours and hours and hours going through audio and not really getting anything. And
right.
And so I guess I should have immediately just kind of related it to that. I don't know why I didn't immediately jump to that.
I think because it's marketed as a game. It comes in a box, and EVPs. It's I don't know. It's a whole different. It seems like a whole different aura around it and energy because even the paranormal workers tend to like that better than they do the Ouija board, and the Ouija can be misused, and so you might not always get accurate stuff either. So it kind of caters to that. Just pull it out of the box. Let's use it. No, there's a lot of I call it training. There's a lot of training required to really use it and get great results.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
what would you tell us about? And I actually talked to you a little bit before this interview about it, but I've off and on, done sessions with either myself or with a trusted partner, and I've never not had a partner that I completely trusted. However, I still in my brain, to me, I can if there's activity. If I'm by myself, that's truly the only way I can 100% trust the information that I got if it came. So what are the different pros and cons, I guess, with having a partner or using the Ouija by yourself?
Well, I think when you have a partner, I know from experience, when you have a partner, it's a lot easier for yourself to let go. You and I were talking about this whole concept of letting go and allowing it. And that's overused a lot in the metaphysical and spiritual communities, let go, allow, and all that stuff.
And in Frozen.
Oh yeah, I'm Frozen. That's right. But guess what? The truth is you have to. Yeah. And I'm very, I can be very analytical at times as well. And so I find that if I can center myself, I use this term a lot, which really to me means feeling solid and within myself, breathing, feeling like I'm coming from a place within, not flittery all over the room and wondering and curious and that and questioning but just in myself, feeling grounded and centered. And then I can trust the movements to happen. Now, that's because I developed it over the years. But when you do it with somebody, at least you have somebody there that's a witness with you, who also has their hands on the planchette, who could be a part of this energy. What I find is that the circuitry between two humans creates more when there's two than there is one. The energy that's created from that. And it helps with on the other dimensions for those consciousness to work with the two energies. In fact, originally, the board, the box that it came in, the one that I have, my one from circa 1970s, and it was the circa 1960s too. It said, set it on the laps between two people, male, female, preferred. And I always wondered, why was it male, female? I thought that's interesting because I do a lot with female now. But when I remember when a lot of the work I was doing as a therapist, and even now I'm writing a book about the balance of the femininity and masculinity, male, female, yin, yang, and stuff like that. What I've learned is the balance of that within ourselves is pertinent to having a creative life, as well as the balance of that with the board. So not that you have to go do it with an opposite sex, but to have that balance within yourself. And so I have a technique I use, which I learned through some of my other spiritual practices. It's really doing a circuitry. And this is something I've never shared on the radio before, and I'll be happy to share it with your group. You take your left hand, your palm, and you place it up and you extend it to the person across from you. Let's say you're getting ready to do the board. They put their right hand on your left hand facing down to your left. So your left hand receives, that's the feminine side of your body. Your right side is your masculine. It gives, your right hand goes up. So there's a circuitry now when you grab the hands of your partner. Their left hand is up and their right hand is facing down. The right hand gives to you, you receive it from your left, take it in, you give it from your right, it goes into the left. That's a balance of masculine and feminine, negative, positive polarities. Everything's connected. So that I found in itself has been a trick. It actually works. That creates a circuitry that allows us the communication to come through even better. This is not taught anywhere like on the Ouija. I just kind of started putting my own spiritual practice around this to make it work better. And every time I've added like my prayers that I do, the breathing exercise, and then the circuitry, it works incredibly. So back to do it with a partner so you have a circuitry built. And this right there, what I told you about, might help you in your session, Patrick, doing the circuitry. Also, when you have somebody there, they're a witness, they get to see the messages come. You get to have a chance to have a discussion. Plus, I know the way you're doing it. You're doing it as a serious researcher. You're not joking around and making it into a game. You don't ever want to do that, people. When you do that, and trust me, I've experimented with all of this, and it's just stupid. When you do that, you get dumb results, and it's like taking yourself 5 steps back with all that you built on the board in terms of moving forward. But a person there as a witness to help you keeps it safe for you. Doing it by yourself, especially if you're new and you don't understand all these things I'm talking about, the circuitry and the energy and getting centered and grounding and et cetera, being protective, white light, you're going to open up some stuff that you may not want to open up. And we use the word open up. You're going to bring in some stuff that could be negative. And I truly believe it's your own projection of your own stuff, but yet we start scaring ourselves. So I don't do Ouija in the dark with the candle, although I don't need to. I usually do it in the bright daylight. I might even do it outside. I mean, it's just like I don't need the lights off, but I like a candle. I usually do it in the same ambiance. Although I have done it in haunted houses and I have done it in the dark. I've done a lot of things along the ways to explore all avenues of it, but I could do it right now, even while talking to you and, get some results. Because for me, it's not about it's not so much where I am in this locality, it's where I am internally. And that's the big piece you need to get through, is where you are internally with using the board. Your intentions, how you feel about it. Does it scare you? Are you afraid to let go? Are you afraid the spirit's going to take over? All these things we've been told and heard through Hollywood and everybody else. So that can be huge stumbling blocks. But yes, work with somebody in the beginning always. That's not to say you can't do it alone, although I don't recommend it, because I do think people that are new at this and haven't really studied and don't have a spiritual practice in place can open up some negative stuff. And when you're with somebody else, you have a better chance to not and to put it away and close it. Always, put the board away when you're done and then move into another space. Move into, let's say you're doing it at your kitchen table, go into the living room when you're done and talk about it. Just leave that space, because it's like saying to the energies, all right, we have a time and place for us. And we have a time and place when it's not us. It's like you have a friend that comes over and visits, and then when dinner's done, you say goodbye, good night. I'm going to go back to my own space, and you're going to go home. It's the same thing. You just got to set them separate, because people can become obsessed with this. Once you start getting really kind of cool messages, people want to get more. They want to get more, and that's why it's best to have a partner always. Because in a partner, you can't just do Ouija anytime you want to. You have to do it when your partner can do it. So it's a scheduling event.
They can help keep you grounded a little bit.
Absolutely. We hope so, right?
Yeah. Well, and I just want to tell the listeners, if they haven't checked out your book, there's history of the Ouija, which is great, and that's fascinating, but you are very clear and helpful about laying out the steps, the process, the ambiance, and proper use, and one of the things that I even emailed you about this, I was so fascinated and appreciative that you included, an opening prayer. Because, when you think, what do I say before I do a Ouija session? And, before EVP, sometimes I have like little rituals or a meditation or something like that. And it's like, well, what do you use? And I loved that you had that in there. That was very cool.
That's great. Now, so do you use a similar prayer then for yourself when you do the Ouija? Or have you implemented mine, or what are you doing for your opening and closing? I mean, how are you doing the board?
In the last couple of times, and like I said, it's been like 6 months ago, but
Okay.
the last few times that I did work with Ouija, I did try your opening prayer. I may have used kind of like my own version of that,
Good.
but
Okay.
I definitely used that to help me. 'Cause I was like,
Excellent.
if it works for Karen, it can work for me, I hope.
Yeah, I think that that version of that prayer started about 1995, if I'm correct, and that's when I started implementing the same one. And that one I wrote for you is basically a version of what I use. I still use to this day, and it might change depending on who's in the room with me with the board. I throw people's names in there, and I put the animals' names in there too. And the piece I do add too is when people leave, I always say in part of the prayers, and white light stays with us, stays with our cars and our automobiles as we go back into our lives as young people, as friends go back to their homes, and as they start their day and journey into the week. I send them light, and we ask that light stays with them. So you can really use it as an opportunity to allow the prayer to extend into your life. And I like the fact you use it with your EVP sessions. I got to tell you, that prayer, I will use it with many, many things I do. In fact, before I get on any show, like I'm doing with you right now, I say that prayer to myself. And I say it when I need a little extra encouragement, when I need a little extra abilities or capabilities or strength, or I'm going into a big meeting and trying to get a deal from a new client. I will say that on a conference call. I don't say it out loud. It's my own secret. It's my secret, and it's my strengthening secret, and it keeps me in my center. This is what I'm talking about when I say have a spiritual practice in place. Now, people would say Ouija board's not spiritual. I would beg for you to differ in your statement of that, because it's everything can have a spiritual bent to it. It's by how we perceive it and approach it. So me sitting outside cross-legged in Central Park could be a spiritual experience for me, and it doesn't have to be, but I could make it into one if I close my eyes, breathe in, and just really let go of some of the sounds around me, and maybe taking the sounds, only focus on sounds I want to hear. Then it becomes an experiment of focus, which helps me focus more. So you can be anywhere and make something into more of a spiritual practice for yourself. I've just really have used this board as an extension of my practice, and I think I get good results too, because it's not my practice, but I bring my spirituality to it, and that's the only way I will use it now. Now, I didn't always do that when I was young. I thought I was talking to dead people, ghosts, games, fun, laughing, joking, slumber parties, all that crazy stuff I did. And even through high school, it was in college when I really woke up and learned that, wow. It made me cry, because the things it would tell people. Yeah, you remember reading that in my book. And to this day, I still get teary-eyed talking about some of those stories, because it really was eye-opening to say, wow, we can heal people. I mean, I shouldn't say we're healing people. People get to be healed through communication with the other side quite often. If this is one tool to do it, I'm going to do it. But I've learned you could do many other things beyond that. And that's where I am with it now. You can do very many, many, many other things beyond that help you learn to speak to your higher self, your inner guidance, your angels, your ethereal beings that are your guides, your animals, your pets, your loved ones, a lot of different levels of energies. And I can go even on to other levels from there I've spoken with. And I would call them interdimensional beings. People might call them ETs. I call them interdimensional beings, and they like to be called that. And there's so many different levels of consciousness out there. We just need to change our vibration to tap into it. And we change our vibration by us creating our circuitry and matching it within. And they have to work with us to match our circuitry and then match our vibration. It's quite, I'm trying to say it in a simple way, and I try to, in my book, I really explain it quite simply as well, because I think it's best to do it on that level. Although they like to tell me some complicated things, but I think on that level, but I think it's not necessary to go to that to depth of like quantum mechanics or quantum physics to talk about that. But that's basically what's happening. There's a vibration, and we're all trying to meet that and match that vibration. And when you do, contact is made. It's quite fascinating how it works.
Well, I'm glad you're kind of staying on a lower realm for me when you're having this
okay.
Because who was you were on a gentleman's radio show just just a few days ago. What radio show
Was that
that?
Chips? Oh, Chips.
Yes.
Chips Reichenthals. Yeah, great
Yeah.
show. Right.
Listen to that, and I was so
That's right.
fascinated. Your both of your brains together. Like my mind was just blown at the topics you were talking about.
We went way out there, didn't we? We spiraled out there, and I was like, well, we used the word Ouija maybe two or three times, but we really got into it. Was fascinating because he's a medium himself, and he's a hypnotherapist, and so am I, and we were able to really go out and looking how the effects of this maybe in society. I'm not talking about the Ouija board now, but how our mind can affect us, and how drugs play into that, and how we have an intention. An intention can create things in our life. I mean, we really went on some tangent. It was beautiful, and goodness gracious, when you do this kind of work, any kind of spiritual work, even EVPs, you begin to realize you're not alone. There's so much more out there. And then, isn't it fascinating? I mean, you've probably come across what I'm talking about. You really begin to see limitless possibilities.
Yeah, and some people just don't get it. And it's hard to talk to people, out in the regular world sometimes about these nerdy, topics, because, they'll just look at you cross-eyed like, what is your problem?
Well, and I don't. I stay, and it's kind of nice that the paranormal community's been really nice to me, and so is the metaphysical and some of these other groups, subgroups, been fabulous. And I feel like, well, I don't have to go out there, although I do go to coast quite often and talk about it. I guess I'm out there, but I don't. That again has a following of people who are least versed in this. Whether they like it or not, they least versed in it. So they don't. It's not that I'm nerdy. It's more like they don't like it, or I'm a demon probably because I talk about it. Or they're glad that I exposed some of the truths about Ouija, and they're like secretly closet Ouija users. It's kind of cool. I get both. Those don't call in, but those write me. I'm like, okay, no problem. I'll be the target. That's no problem. I love it. But yeah, there's the board, the work on the board, EVP and this stuff. We don't necessarily share with everybody out there. We can't, because there's not. The people have got to understand this. They've got to be open. Here we go. The word open again. They have to be open. There's something beyond their senses, the 5 senses we have. They have to understand there's something beyond that. And you only can understand what's beyond it if you take the time to really delve into it. Or you might start watching some ghost shows on TV, and then that might start making you, or you might have an experience of bright lights in the sky. And, my thing was I had experiences. And then back when they didn't have the ghost shows on TV, I think the first ghost show that came out was Project Blue Book, and I think that was in the late 80s, I think. They didn't really have ghost shows. I mean, they had Twilight Zone and sci-fi, but I'm talking about ghost shows or UFO shows or paranormal shows. They didn't have that really. So yeah, it's changed over the years, but it's nice to, when you do find people you can talk to this about, because you don't feel so alone with it. So I love the fact you have this blog, and people can follow along on this blog and see what you're investigating and what your interests are, and then say, well, I'm kind of doing this too, and reach out to you and make comment. It's awesome that there's a network.
Yeah, it's been kind of a life-changing thing in the last couple of years to kind of, and I've kind of had my own growth and kind of switched from one thing to the next thing, and tried different areas of spirit communication in the paranormal world. But it's actually a very cool transition to what I want to talk about next. If we can take a turn, okay. I want to play a clip for everybody. Some of my sessions, I use Spirit Box, digital audio recorder, a Mel meter, etc., along with the Ouija board if I'm using the Ouija board. And this audio evidence, which I consider to be possible evidence, here I always say possible evidence, I never say this is an EVP, but it's possible evidence of spirit communication where through the Spirit Box, someone seems to have possibly said my name, Patrick. But more importantly, I feel could be possibly someone identifying the Ouija board by saying Ouija board, and again, saying Ouija incorrectly. That's what I hear anyway. And this all happens after I ask the question, what am I touching during the session? I don't remember how long the session had been at that point. It's been a while ago. But I'll play that right now a couple of times for the listeners.
What am I touching?
touching? What am I touching? Karen, what are your thoughts on that audio clip? And do you ever use the Ouija board in conjunction with any other spirit communication devices or divination tools?
You know, it's so cool that you asked that. Okay, so first to answer it, I clearly heard the word Patrick in that clip. I'm like, wow, almost eerily. And, it doesn't scare me. When I say eerily, it's just like, wow. I mean, I'm like jazzed up about it. I get excited because I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of the other side. I'm not. I'm just not afraid of it. Too many years doing this. Yeah. But the other part was harder for me to hear, and it sounds like I was trying to imitate it earlier, but it definitely is electronic voice. And if it's not Ouija, which is the proper pronunciation, it'd be more like Ouija. Ouija. Yeah, Ouija.
I love the imitation. Do it one more time.
Ouija. It's like that. You hear Ouija board, but it's like electronic, and so it's a little harder to hear. But you hear that after you hear Patrick, you hear something else, and then it goes that Ouija board part real quickly, and it's so very fascinating. Now, I wasn't into EVP, strength, none of this stuff. I was just on my own world for the last 41 years doing the board. It was only in the last. My book has not even been out for a year. It'll be a year in October, the one about the Ouija board. And my first book came out, it'll be 2 years in November. So I haven't really been out in the open talking about this very long, or even experiencing all the paranormal stuff that's out there. Although I watch a few paranormal shows, but not too often. I tend to go, I might see some of the movies because I'm doing it myself. I'm just going, in real time, I can go talk to that spirit, so I just do it myself. Okay. So, I'm perplexed with, the whole idea of recording while you're doing the board. Now, what happened was I met a group of people. They were put together with me. They're a paranormal research group that Dave Schrader, for one of his shows, got me in touch with. Mm-hmm. And these guys had developed a electronic Ouija. And my joke was old school meets new school, high tech. And I'm like the old fashioned Ouija planchette, and they've got this high tech stuff. What it was, what it is, it's really cool though. I love it. It is a piano bench that they opened up, and inside they have like a Frank Spock EVP and all these meters and stuff. I don't even know what they all are. K2, is that what it's called? Uh-huh. I know K2 skis. I mean, I'm a skier. I was like, what is it called? Because I don't mess with those. It's not my tool, but I appreciate them. So they had all this stuff strapped in there, attached to it. And when they used the board, they would talk to some of the spirits they knew, but they were only mostly asking yes and no. So I gave them a little training, and oh my God, their sessions changed. Mm-hmm. But they would get EVPs while doing it. So I brought them over to my house. I had my partner there. We pulled out my old fashioned board. I said, we'll get on your high tech one soon. But my guys wanted the old board first.
Me first.
Yeah, they were like, me first over here. So we did my original board, 1973 board. We did that board, and they were amazed. They were filming it and going, oh my God, it moves so fast. I go, well, I'm like going, what? You haven't seen this before? I'm thinking, this is a common day occurrence for me. It moves this quick for me, So I was kind of, but I realized it doesn't do it for everybody, because I'm kind of going, wow, this is interesting. This is like last spring. So then, now you're going to get a kick out of this. So they had me get on their board, and I said, okay, let my partner and I do it on your board, because I knew we get good results as we already worked together. Board worked. My spirits came through, specifically one named Healing Spirit. You probably remember him. I call him. It's androgynous. Uh-huh. He's in the book. Yeah, he's a fabulous. He always comes through when people need a little pick me up, or they're feeling a little down, and he has some great advice to get you back on your way. So Healing Spirit came through, and that's the first time they met Healing Spirit, and then the guy. I won't say names in case they want to keep. I don't know. They can listen to this, and they can respond to you later. But the head guy of this group said, he said, okay, I want to ask your guy, Healing Spirit, if he can make a voice on here. So Healing Spirit talks and says, he goes, I don't think I have a voice. I've never been born before in a physical body. I'm an ethereal being. He's like, I don't think I have a voice. I can't make a sound. And I'm thinking, we're not talking to a dead person here. So it's always a matter of perspective. And so Healing Spirit and a few of my other entities I talk to all the time are not dead people. They're not deceased beings. They are ethereal beings who've never had a physical form. They've never been born in a incarnation. They've always been in the light, working as light workers on the other side, as they explain it to me. And healing spirit is one of them. And so he's like, "Why? I don't think I can make a sound." He goes, "I'll try." And of course, nothing came through. He's like, "I don't think I have a voice." And we just thought that was the funniest thing.
And maybe that's why sometimes when they come through, it sounds like a speak and spell.
Yeah, right.
They don't have a voice.
They do, and yeah, and then imagine trying to come from another dimension and make and move the particles to make the sound. That's crazy too. And you think about what's required. Yeah, it's
I can think about that all day long. Sometimes and be like, how does it work anyway?
So much is required. I understand that part. So much is required, and if I'm sick or or even slight cold or my partner is, or let's say there's an atmospheric effect such as solar flares going on, or there's a dust storm, or there's an eclipse of the moon, and just any kind of energy can disturb our connection with the board. And I was on a psychic show the other day from Chicago, and she was saying that's the same as being a medium herself. When she reads people, she says those same kinds of atmospheric things or conditions or people not feeling well will affect the reading too, because it's all about energy. And so my guides will say when they come through, or they try to come through, say, "We can't tonight, we can't today." They might just say, "It's can't, bad time." And they're very short sentences. You probably read that in the book. I talked a lot about that. One time I was in Texas at this time, in Austin, Texas, and I had wanted to do a conversation. They said, "No, we can't talk. Wait till next week." Right now, a lot of people in Austin are clearing and releasing their energy. I'm not sure what was going on, but he says atmospherically that affects people. It makes them clear and release energy. And because there's so much clearing going on, you can't even communicate. We can't even communicate with you. We can't get through all the blah, 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 blabbing going on, kind of like airwaves.
Yeah.
It's kind of like getting dropped from a call from a cell tower. Too much going on, your call won't go through. You get dropped. Same thing. It's working on principles of frequency, just like cell towers. It's really fascinating.
That is fascinating. When we return from this brief break, we will come back to our fascinating conversation with Karen A. Dahlman, and she'll talk to us about some of the common fears that she runs into with people and the Ouija. She'll also answer a submitted question about Zozo from a listener and fan of Karen's, so you won't want to miss that. We'll be right back. If you like the Big Séance podcast, you might like what's going on over at my blog, bigseance.com. Check it out. I bring up so many nerdy things over there. From there, you can subscribe to the blog by clicking the follow button. You can like the Big Séance Facebook page and find me on Twitter. And of course, you can find links to this and future episodes of the Big Séance podcast. One of the nicest things that you could do to help me out is to share an episode of this podcast with all of your fellow paranerds. Want to be even cooler? Find the Big Séance podcast on iTunes, where you can subscribe, rate the show, or write a review. I would really appreciate that. Now, let's go back to, whatever nerdy topic we were discussing. Now we're getting ready to have some audience participation here. You've got a follower who has submitted a question for you. But before we get to that question, just kind of one of the last questions I have is, what are some of the fears that you find that people have about the Ouija board that are maybe, silly? I shouldn't say silly, but, fears that people shouldn't be worried about. And then maybe go into some of the positive aspects of the Ouija board. Like what should people go in, to use the Ouija board for? I didn't ask that very well. Do you know what I'm saying? I
do. I think it's a really good question. I like the way you prefaced it and asked it. Usually people say, they just make their statement, "I'm afraid of the board." Okay. I like that you're open to hearing both sides of it. So can I answer this kind of esoteric like?
Please do. I might, My brain might explode, but go ahead. I'm sure the listeners will love it.
Stop me and ask questions if you have to. But I like to look at things not as either or, black or white. I think that's super important in life too. Yes, there's a moral conduct and ethics and codes we should be following in terms of how to live within our society and get along with people. Absolutely. When it comes to expanding yourself and your consciousness and mind, the more yes and no, highs and lows, good and bad, positive, negative, fear, love, the opposites, you see them as opposites and polar opposites, you create this tension within yourself. And it's harder to find your truth of who you are, to find the calling of your soul, the expression of yourself, embodiment of your soul's passion, which my first book is all about, how to get to that place. That's my first book is about. All right. So that's my esoteric kind of answer. Fear is the opposite of love. Hate is not the opposite of love. Fear is. When we fear something, it's because we can't find the love in it. We don't understand it. So when we don't understand something and it's really pressing on us, we use fear instead and go, oh, that's bad. Let's demonize that. We do that throughout our culture. We do it with races. We do it with situations. We do it with people. We do it with industries. We do it with ourselves. Well, I don't like that part of me. I'm not going to look at it. And that's when you get into hiding parts of yourself and you project them out there. And I think we're going to get into that talking a little bit more about that when we take the question that the gentleman wrote in for the show. Mm-hmm. So when people have fear, I think it's a very, let me back up. When people have feelings, which includes fear, that's a real important barometer to knowledge. So when people are feeling fearful of something, there's something inside you saying, I can't quite find love in that space. And maybe I'm not supposed to, but maybe I'm supposed to pay attention. And it's going off, going beep, beep, beep. And you should really go, what is that I'm afraid of? And not go, well, that thing's bad, or that person's bad, or that person's evil because he looks this way. Instead, go, what is it about me that I don't like right now? What is it that's making me kind of cringe back in? When you use your feelings in that manner, we can begin to understand that those are keys given to us so we can always get to know and judge ourselves within our relationship to the world better, meaning you can begin to stand in your center more often and feel more calm and peace and ease when the world is chaotic around you. So the feelings are your barometers. So fear, somebody's fearful of the Ouija board. This is why I never get upset about it when people have a problem and they want to lash out. No problem to me because I get it. They're fearful. They're stuck in a fearful stage and they're going to put it on me. And I'm the one that's pushing demonology supposedly because I'm talking about this stuff. Well, I don't polarize things. Yes, there's a way to behave and a way not to behave within our culture. But yet, if you look at for example, the two main symbols on the Ouija board is the sun and the moon. The sun is the soul, the moon is the luna. The soul and the luna are alchemical symbols of the male, female, masculine, feminine, queen, and king together as one. They are the balance of each other, the polar opposites. That's another reason why I do circuitry, the balance of male, female within, with the energy, with the board when they come and communicate. And two of my main guides I speak with are called the sun and moon. Not surprisingly, I get what I go at. If I go at the board with these intentions to work with balance, I'm going to get that back. So my entities I speak with are balanced entities. The male, female parts come through and communicate with me. Now, when people are afraid, again, it's because they don't know how to quite put it in perspective, in their box. So I would never tell somebody they're wrong for being fearful. I would say, look at that and see if that's a measurement of something that you need to look at and go, not for me. Maybe I need to stay away. But if you want to get through the fear, is to just be open to it. So fear, you don't want fear. This is what we don't want. We don't want fear to get where it constricts us and makes us so we can't move forward. Or some people get agoraphobia, where they can't leave their house. Agoraphobia. I said it incorrectly. It's when you have the fear of the marketplace, fear of leaving your home. That's when your fear gets so crippling. I mean, there's a lot of fears like that that you'll see. We get so stuck in our ways. I'm saying there's so many possibilities in the world. If this possibility doesn't work for you of the board or EVPs or paranormal investigations, fine. Just be open, hear it. It may not be for you. Your fear may just say, okay, not for me. I'm not comfortable in that space yet. But if you keep putting resistance to it, then yes, if you get around the board, it's going to be negative and evil for you because that's your resistance that's really going to come out through the board. Mm-hmm. So what you bring to the table is what you're going to get. What you bring to the board is what you're going to get from the kind of energy you attract. And that's in life in general. So that's a very esoteric way of saying what you have within or harbor within is what you will see without. Now, the positive experiences are the same as the answer I just gave you. The positive is you can learn to use your feelings. And in fact, when I speak to my spirit guides on the board, they have a lot of incredible things to tell me to help me look at. They don't give me answers. They might say some things that help me align back to my own truths, but they'll say, "Hey, the answers are all within you." I put a lot of quotes in my books about, the second book about what some of the things they said. And here, let me get the one. They always have something very positive to say to me, and how you really have all the answers. So the sun says, you already know what to do. You hold all the answers, the sun. They talk to me on this level. And I might say, well, have you thought about this? And they'll say, but you have the answers. What is it that's blocking you right now, Karen? So it's almost like I'm going to a therapist or a shrink, a spirit shrink. And they're asking questions, and I'm asking questions back. And there's a dialogue. And that's the positive side of this, when you're not afraid of it. I'm not going out there randomly trying to talk to drop negative energies. Although I have been asked to go into haunted places, and I do speak to those spirits that are there that are haunting, and I've never had a negative experience. Although I've had some that are, negative. I have never had an evil demonic experience. I've had some negative when I say they get angry, they might touch you, there might be some poltergeist activity. Yet I don't think that's a bad thing. I think we need to be open to seeing we're moving into their realm. Why are we saying you need to behave like I behave? That is their realm. And it's not me to say you need to be exorcised out of this house. They need to come to me and say, can I have your assistance to do this? I should never push my agenda on a person, or let alone a spirit. So that's both sides of Ouija, how I see there's the negative aspect of it and the positive aspect. And to me, it all really is one. And the final thing I'd like to say about that is to really, really trust yourself about when you use a tool such as the Ouija board, meaning if never feels right to you or doesn't feel right, don't use it. If you use it once and you get a negative feeling, trust your feelings. You feel fearful, put it away. It's not time. And final word on that is just learn to trust your feelings.
There you have it, folks. Wisdom from my life-ologist, Karen A. Dahlman.
Oh, sweet. Thank you.
No, actually, you inspired some thoughts in my brain. People like on Facebook or through the blog, a lot of times when I express my interest in, this stuff, the first thing people do is say, oh, well, be careful.
Oh, I know.
Oh, be careful. And I'm like, well, I've never experienced anything. And like you said, maybe a little negative. Yeah. But, I don't even know really if I can get my brain to believe in, the demonic and all that stuff. So it's like, until I've experienced anything like that, I have no reason to, yes, be careful, but I have no reason to fear. And I feel like if I'm going to have a blog about this type of thing, and if I'm going to, I feel like I have a responsibility to go out and kind of try some of these things and get a handle on them. So that's usually my response to people as well. I have no reason to fear it yet.
Yeah, it's all in the name of science. You're right. It's all in the name of research, and that's a great place to be and it's a safe, neutral place to be. I find that if we remain neutral when people are fearful, I usually don't get into conversations deeper with that because, unless it's like a show like this, be happy to go into it because everybody has a right, and they have the right to be afraid and make their comments, and really what they're saying is, oh my God, I'm so afraid to do that myself. I couldn't do what you're doing. I'm so afraid to do that myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get
it. Saying. Yep. I know you get it. So, we move on and we do our work. And then yet they are the ones that are going to be really curious and they're going to want to, you know what I mean? They're going to still be curious enough to pay attention to what you're writing about and what you're experimenting with. And it helps people, it opens their mind. It can be a fabulous tool to learn.
And that brings us to our question from another one of your fans. And do you want to go into this question, or do you want me to just read it? Because I have it here in front of me.
Read it.
Okay, so Blue says, yes, I am not into the dark side, in quotes, of Ouija. Don't take me wrong, but read on Coast to Coast some references to Zozo or something, a demonic entity possibly, and Googled it. Amazing, creepy stuff on the internet, and was curious and a bit creeped out. Could you elaborate, explain what you think it is, why it appears, and how to avoid? And he says, thank you.
Yeah, great question. I that's a good one. People want to talk about Zozo here and there, and I'm glad when it comes up. There's a phenomenon out there, and it's on the internet. Blue's absolutely right. Google Zozo, and you will find all kinds of scary information about, they call it Mr. Zozo, or just the Zozo phenomenon, where supposedly there's apparitions, and he says negative things, and they equate him to like the exorcist Pazuzu, that spirit. I think the word Zozo actually translates to blackbird or crow or something in one language. It's like a messenger, basically. In Native American, that would be a messenger. Okay, I have a few thoughts on it. First of all, I want to say I don't believe there's evil in the energy of the universe when it was created. What I believe has happened is that people have done bad things, horrific things that have created an evil energy. So I do think there's a light and the dark, because those two go together, and they're the opposite side of each other. But within that doesn't mean there's necessarily evil. What it means is I think people sometimes go off and do things that are horrible. Killing people, mass murders, shooting people, concentration camps, etc. All this stuff, Nazi Germany, all these things that have happened in our recent psyche. It creates an energy. And I'm going to go a little esoteric again. So I have to answer these questions. I think this is not an easy answer. That's why I love this question. Yeah. It's not easy. People want to hear me say, oh my God, don't get on. If you talk to Mr. Zozo, get him off the board. That's not my answer. My answer is this. I believe Zozo is a collectiveness of energy, a collective consciousness of energy that humans have created. And it's personified in the name of Mr. Zozo. So it's like an archetypal energy. And archetypes are these energies that it's a universal energy. It's a collection of energy that we all can pattern ourselves from. For example, a lot of us know some man who never wants to grow up. He could be a 50-year-old man, but never grows up. They call that the Peter Pan syndrome, right? The Jungians would call him, Carl Jung, psychology would call him puer eternal, the eternal boy. So that person starts acting like the eternal boy and goes on his whole life, the playboy and running around and midlife crisis and all these things. And there's one for the woman that does the same thing, puera eternal, which is the eternal girl. And there's the father time, there's the maiden, there's the mother, there's the crone, there's the old man time. There's all these different kinds of archetypal energies that constellate. And when we fall into one of those energy patterns, we begin to take on those personalities. I think Mr. Zozo is a collection of negative energy out there of people wanting something fearful, wanting something creepy. So therefore it personifies and comes through as this negative energy. There's so much out there we don't understand about our consciousness and our subconscious mind and the levels of consciousness that we communicate through these tools and even move into different dimensions. I really believe we can create our reality. We can create constructs within our life, and we could be living here on the same realm, yet my foot could be in 2 other dimensions over, because my world and my mind is very different than the world maybe you're living in, Patrick, right now. So you may see the atrocities of the world, I may not. So it's a very esoteric, again, conversation to have. It's hard to imagine all that, but I think what we do is we draw to us again what we're afraid to look at within ourselves. And everyone's going to say, well, Mr. Zozo's real. He's out there. Well, we always say something bad that's out there. And now we're talking about, these are spiritual things. They're ethereal. We can't actually, we can't really put a physical face on it. It's not like it's a dead person named Zozo that you're talking to on the board. Again, I think it's a collectiveness of energy. So how to avoid it? Now, I've had Zozo come through. There you go. It happens. Energy can come through. This is quite some time ago, and I do remember what was going on around this situation. There's a lot of negativity, and I had let's say some words with somebody, and it was a negative exchange. Let's just put it that way. And I believe that negative exchange constellated that to come through. And when it came through, he introduced himself, said who he was, and I said, okay, well, that's great. Really, I have no use for you here, and I'm just going to ask you to leave. And he left. And then I put my board away for a few days and didn't use it. It's that simple. You don't have to, if somebody's being abusive to you in life, you need to get away from it. If somebody's being abusive to you on the board, You need to put it away.
Right.
You have more control on this side than they ever will have. So don't welcome him in. Don't communicate. Put him away and say, you must leave right now. And know that by saying that, you have free will. They have to follow your free will. So although hauntings, yes, there are energies that stick around in a building. There are personalities that are stuck. I call those earthbound spirits. Talk all about this in my book, how to distinguish all these. That are stuck doesn't mean they're evil. It just means maybe they're stuck in some negativity. And I think Zozo is a negativity energy that's become evil because we projected, we displaced, we put our shadow onto this collective consciousness of energy. And so now we've got this demonic guy out there, demonic guru, I guess, when people want to follow him. It's silly to me. Why would you want to bring more negativity into your life? I'm sure we're all struggling enough with this game called life. Do we need more? And that's how I look at it. It's not like it's all roses. No, and your life exists and things happen. It's just that why would you want to draw more to you on that? My stance has always been self-responsibility and empowerment, and how can you do that for yourself? And so, Mr. Zozo, you're not going to attract him if you don't. You're not going to attract him, number one, if you're approaching a board and this kind of work on a level of what your intentions are, and you feel very solid within yourself, meaning you are clear, you're in a good space, you're not negative. I mean, I had no business doing the board that day after I had that altercation, that exchange. That is what brings this stuff in. No business. And say you learn along the way, and you don't do it. So that's what I'm saying. So when this happens to you and you're on the board, you just say bye-bye.
So we've kind of created Zozo.
I believe we created it as a collective consciousness of archetypal energy. Absolutely. I believe we created it. And there were probably others created before. And this won't be the last, and it will transform into another kind of energy. And it's not like a real literal thing, but yet it is an energy. And just like archetypes on a real thing, you still constellate those behaviors. So we could fall trapped to that energy.
Great question, Blue. I thank you for submitting that. Awesome. Well, Karen, why don't you go ahead and give us, do you have some future projects and tell us where we can find the books and website and all of that, and I'll include it in the show notes.
Oh, excellent. Well, first I want to say thank you, Patrick, for reaching out to me and having me on your show. I really appreciate this forum, and I love your blog. So kudos to you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored to hear that. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Well deserved. And so, you can find my books on my website if you want autographed copies. And that's at KarenADahlman.com, KarenADahlman.com. Or you can go to Creative Visions Publications, which is the publishing house of my books. Okay, so you can go there.com, or you can go to Amazon.com and you can buy the Kindle, which is definitely reduced in price, and then you can get the paperback there as well. They won't be autographed, of course, the paperbacks on Kindle, but it depends what you want, what's easier for you to order. And then I have all kinds of stuff on my website too. As Patrick mentioned, every show I do, there's links to them. Patrick's link will be on there as well. Articles I've written and other shows I've done with Coast to Coast and some TV stuff. Just if you have questions, you can contact me there, send me an email. Also, you can find me on Facebook, Karen A. Dahlman, Google Plus, Twitter, everywhere, Karen A. Dahlman. Put the A in there. There's another woman named Karen Dahlman, and she's a psychiatrist, I think, from Mount Sinai on the East Coast, and I'm a psychotherapist with and we have the same name, kind of similar backgrounds, but I don't think she uses the Ouija board. So Karen A. Dahlman, and you'll find me everywhere. You can't escape me now.
Well, oh my gosh, I can't. I have been waiting for this conversation for so long, and it is exactly the conversation that I wanted it to be. And I so appreciate you letting me, be a nerd fanboy and ask you tons of questions and being here today. That's awesome. Thank you.
Loved it. Great questions, too. And again, thank you once again. And thank you to the listeners of Patrick's podcast as well as his blog, The Big Séance. It's awesome.
Oh, well, thank you very much. You rock.
Rock on.
For show notes, including links to anything we may have mentioned in this episode, visit bigseance.com, now the home of both the blog and the podcast. Just click on the Big Séance Podcast logo or find it in the menu. You can also find and subscribe to the show on iTunes. Do you have any comments or thoughts? please contact me at patrick@bigseance.com. I could decide to include them in a future show. Thank you so much for listening and reading. Unfortunately, it's time to blow the candles out, but we'll see you and light them again next time.